"Sir, step away from the shoreline and keep your hands where we can see them." That was the first thing I heard as two sheriff's deputies hurried down the wooden dock toward my old aluminum fishing boat. 20 feet away, HOA President. Linda Mercer stood with her arms crossed, a smug smile spreading across her face. Her expensive sunglasses reflected the calm morning water as if she'd already won. "There he is," she shouted, pointing directly at me. "That's the man," I reported. "He's trespassing on our community lake." I slowly set my fishing rod across the seat of my boat and looked around. The lake was perfectly still. The sun had barely climbed over the pine trees surrounding Silver Pines Estates, painting the water with streaks of gold. It should have been the kind of peaceful morning my father loved. Instead, it had turned into a crime scene over a single fishing line. One deputy called out again. "Sir, we received a report that you're refusing to leave private HOA property." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at Linda and asked, "Are you really doing this?" She smiled as if she'd been waiting for that question. "You've ignored 3 violation notices already," she replied loudly enough for several homeowners watching from the marina to hear. "You don't live in Silver Pines. You never paid HOA dues. You have no right to fish in our lake." Our lake, those 2 words almost made me laugh. Instead, I reached into my tackle box and quietly clipped another lure onto my line. That only made Linda angrier. "See," she snapped at the deputies. "He's refusing lawful orders." One of the officers stepped closer. "Sir, could you come onto the dock so we can talk?" I nodded, climbed out of the boat, and tied it to the cleat with the same faded rope I'd been using for nearly 15 years. As soon as my boots touched the dock, Linda marched over holding a clipboard. She peeled a bright yellow notice from the stack and shoved it toward my chest. "HOA violation notice. Unauthorized fishing. Fine. $5.50. Effective immediately," she announced proudly. "You're permanently banned from this lake." Several residents standing nearby whispered to one another. Most of them had no idea who I was to them. I probably looked exactly like the kind of man Linda described: a middle-aged guy in muddy work boots, worn jeans, and an old fishing jacket that had seen better days. My 20-year-old pickup truck sat in the gravel lot. My boat looked older than some of the houses surrounding the shoreline. Nothing about me suggested money. Nothing suggested lawyers. Nothing suggested ownership. Linda clearly enjoyed that. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "You people? The ones who think, because they've been coming here forever. They can do whatever they want. I've been fishing here a long time," I answered. "Not anymore." She folded her arms. "This lake belongs to Silver Pines HOA." Then she leaned closer so only I could hear. "People like you don't own lakes." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The deputies exchanged uneasy glances. One of them looked at the citation in Linda's hand. The other looked at me. Almost expecting an argument, they didn't get one. Instead, I carefully folded the violation notice and slipped it into my jacket pocket. "I'll keep this," I said. Linda laughed. "You'll need it when collections comes after you." She pulled out her phone and dialed again. "Dispatch," she said loudly. "The trespasser is refusing to leave. I want him removed before he becomes violent." "Violent?" I hadn't even raised my voice. One deputy frowned. "Ma'am, has he threatened anyone?" "He doesn't have to," Linda answered quickly. "He's intimidating our residents." I looked directly at the deputy. "I have one request before anyone decides who's trespassing." "What is it?" he asked. I nodded toward the waterproof document case resting inside my boat. "Please call Sheriff Thomas Cole." Linda rolled her eyes. "Oh, this should be good." I smiled for the first time that morning. "Then ask him to read the lake deed before you put handcuffs on the wrong man." Sheriff Thomas Cole hadn't arrived yet. But while the deputies spoke quietly over their radios, my mind drifted back to the day my father handed me the old brass key to our lakeside cabin. "Never forget," he had told me. "People will always see the water. Very few will ever bother asking who owns what's underneath it." At the time, I thought he was talking about fishing. Years later, I realized he was talking about human nature. The lake had been part of my family's life for almost 70 years. My grandfather bought the surrounding land shortly after returning from the Korean War, clearing brush with little more than a tractor. An axe and determination. The cabin was built by hand, one log at a time, and my father spent every summer maintaining the small earthen dam that kept the lake healthy through dry seasons. To most people, it was just another beautiful lake. To my family, it was home. When my father passed away 8 months earlier, inheriting the property wasn't simply about receiving land. It meant protecting the last place where I could still hear his voice every time the wind moved through the pines. That was why Linda's accusation stung far more than the $5.50 fine. She wasn't just calling me a trespasser. She was trying to erase 3 generations of my family's history. Silver Pines Estates didn't even exist when my grandfather bought the property. The subdivision was built barely 15 years ago after a developer purchased farmland on the eastern shore. To attract wealthy buyers, the brochures advertised exclusive access to a private community lake. Technically, that statement wasn't entirely false. The developer had negotiated a limited recreational access agreement with my father before construction began. Residents were allowed to fish, kayak, and use a small floating dock during daylight hours, but the agreement came with strict conditions. The lake itself never changed ownership. The shoreline surrounding our cabin remained private. No commercial activities were allowed. No permanent marina could be built. Most importantly, the agreement clearly stated that access could be terminated if its terms were violated or allowed to expire. Few residents ever knew those details. The developer quietly sold every house. The original board resigned. Years passed. New HOA leaders took over. Eventually, Linda Mercer became HOA president. Unlike the people who lived there, Linda never bothered reading the original agreement. She simply assumed that because the neighborhood had used the lake for years, it belonged to the HOA. Then she started acting like it did. First came fishing permits, then annual lake fees, then guest passes. After that, she approved a larger marina with covered boat slips, and even hosted summer festivals that charged admission to non-residents. Every dollar collected went through the HOA. Not a single check was ever written to my father. After his funeral, I spent weeks sorting through dusty filing cabinets inside the cabin. Hidden beneath old tax records and faded photographs was a weathered leather folder marked simply Lake Property. Inside were documents most people would have overlooked: the original warranty deed, a certified county survey, the recorded water rights agreement, the developer's signed access contract, even a handwritten letter reminding future owners never to surrender title to the lake itself. I carried copies of every one of those documents in a waterproof case on my boat, not because I expected trouble, because my father always said the same thing whenever paperwork protected something worth keeping. Never argue with people who have opinions, he'd tell me. Just hand the law to someone who can read. 10 minutes earlier, Linda Mercer had called me a trespasser. She still had no idea that the only person standing on property they didn't own was her. The distant rumble of another patrol SUV echoed across the lake. Sheriff Thomas Cole stepped out before the vehicle had completely stopped. He was a tall man in his early 60s, calm by nature, the kind of officer who listened before speaking. The moment he saw me standing beside my boat, he gave a small nod. "Morning, Daniel." "Morning, Sheriff." Linda immediately walked toward him, waving the yellow violation notice like it was undeniable proof. "Sheriff, thank goodness you're here. This man has been trespassing all morning. He refused to leave after multiple warnings. And now he's disrupting our residence." Sheriff Cole accepted the paper without saying a word. He skimmed the citation, then looked at me. "Is that your boat?" "It is. And you're claiming you have documentation?" "I do." I pointed toward the gray waterproof case resting beneath the bench seat. "It's all inside." One of the deputies retrieved the case and handed it to the sheriff. Linda folded her arms confidently. "It doesn't matter what papers he has. This is HOA property." Sheriff Cole ignored the interruption. He unclipped the latches, removed a neatly organized folder, and pulled out the first document. The original warranty deed. The smile on Linda's face didn't disappear. Not yet. The sheriff unfolded the attached county survey and spread it across the hood of his patrol SUV. One deputy held the corners against the morning breeze while the other leaned closer to read the legal description. For nearly a minute, no one spoke. The only sounds were birds over the water and the soft creak of boats tied to the marina. Finally, Sheriff Cole traced one finger across the survey. "This boundary line includes the entire northern shoreline," he continued, reading the lake bed. Another pause. "Water rights." Then his finger stopped over a single line near the bottom of the page. "Current owner." He looked up at me. "Daniel Hayes." The words landed like a hammer. Linda laughed nervously. "That can't be right." Sheriff Cole calmly lifted another document from the folder, the recorded access agreement. He read aloud. "Residents of Silver Pines Estates are granted limited recreational access. Ownership of the lake, lakebed, and surrounding property shall remain exclusively with the grantor and successors." He turned another page. "This agreement expires unless renewed in writing." His eyes shifted to the final page. "I don't see any renewal." Linda's confidence began to crack. "Well, we've been using the lake for years." "Using it," the sheriff replied evenly. "Doesn't make you the owner." She quickly pointed toward the marina. "But we built all of this. And did you receive written permission from the property owner? Silence. The deputies exchanged another glance. Sheriff Cole slowly closed the folder before looking directly at Linda. Mrs. Mercer, Mr. Hayes is not trespassing. He paused just long enough for every homeowner watching from the dock to hear the next sentence. Based on these recorded documents, you're currently standing on his property. A wave of whispers rolled through the crowd. Several residents stared at Linda. Others looked back toward the expensive marina they had been told belonged to the HOA. Linda's face turned pale. No, that's impossible. Before she could say another word, one deputy stepped forward. Ma'am, we also need to discuss the information you provided during your 911 call. Sheriff Cole nodded. The dispatcher's recording states you reported an aggressive trespasser threatening residents. He looked at both deputies. Did either of you observe threatening behavior? No, Sheriff. He turned back to Linda. Filing a knowingly false emergency report is a serious matter. For the first time that morning, Linda had nothing to say. I slipped the folded 550 citation back into my jacket pocket and looked across the lake. The argument was over, but the real fight, the one that would determine who truly controlled this lake, was only beginning. Most people would have walked away after that. The sheriff had confirmed I owned the lake. The deputies had witnessed everything. The 550 citation was worthless. By all appearances, the fight was over. Linda Mercer didn't see it that way. The very next morning, I found 3 new orange signs nailed to trees along my shoreline. HOA members only, private community property, unauthorized access prohibited. Every one of them had been placed on my land. I took photographs before removing a single sign. An hour later, another letter appeared in my mailbox. This time it came from the HOA attorney. According to the letter, Silver Pines intended to sue me for interfering with community amenities and demanded I restore public access to the lake immediately. I smiled. Apparently no one had shown the attorney the documents Sheriff Cole had read the day before. Instead of arguing, I called my own lawyer by the end of the afternoon. Certified notices were delivered to every HOA board member. The notices were simple. Effective immediately, all recreational access to the lake was suspended until ownership issues were resolved. Every unauthorized dock, floating platform, and boat slip would be inspected. Any structure built without the property owner's written permission would have to be removed. That announcement sent the neighborhood into complete chaos. Residents flooded the HOA Facebook group with questions. When did we stop owning the lake? Why are our dues paying for something we don't own? Did the board know about this? Linda answered every question the same way. Ignore the rumors, she insisted. I had forged the paperwork. She claimed the sheriff had misunderstood the documents. She even promised that the HOA would win the lake back in court. But the truth has a habit of spreading faster than rumors. 2 days later, my attorney received an unexpected phone call. It came from Karen Douglas, the HOA's former treasurer. She had resigned nearly 3 years earlier. I think you should see something, she said. That afternoon, we met at a small coffee shop outside town. Karen slid a thick envelope across the table. I kept copies. Inside were financial statements, meeting minutes, contractor invoices, and dozens of emails between Linda and the previous board. One document immediately caught my attention. It was an engineering proposal for expanding the marina. Across the top, Linda had handwritten a note. Don't mention the deed. Homeowners don't need to know. Another email was even worse. A board member had asked whether the HOA actually owned the lake before approving construction. Linda's reply was only one sentence. If people believe we own it, they'll keep paying the fees. I looked up from the papers. How long has this been going on? Karen sighed. Long before I resigned, she explained that every homeowner paid annual lake maintenance fees, marina fees, and guest permit fees. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had been collected over the years, yet none of those funds had ever gone to the actual property owner. As we organized the documents, my attorney quietly smiled. This isn't just a property dispute anymore, he said. It's evidence. The following Monday, the HOA scheduled an emergency board meeting to reassure angry homeowners. Linda expected another opportunity to accuse me in front of the community. She had no idea that nearly every document sitting inside Karen's envelope would be waiting for her when those meeting room doors opened. The clubhouse was packed. Nearly every homeowner in Silver Pines had shown up for the emergency board meeting. Some wanted answers. Others simply wanted to know whether they had really been paying thousands of dollars to use a lake the HOA never owned. Linda Mercer walked confidently to the front of the room. Wearing her usual tailored blazer and carrying a thick binder, she tapped the microphone. Thank you all for coming. I know there's been a lot of misinformation spread over the last few days. Her eyes landed on me sitting quietly in the back row. This entire situation is the result of one individual trying to intimidate our community. Several homeowners nodded. Others looked uncertain. Before Linda could continue, the clubhouse doors opened. Sheriff Thomas Cole walked in beside my attorney, followed by Karen Douglas, the former HOA treasurer. Neither of them said a word. My attorney simply placed 3 large binders on the conference table. "Since ownership has become the topic of tonight's meeting," he said, "we thought everyone deserved to see the complete record." He opened the first binder. Inside was the original warranty deed. Next came the certified county survey, then the recorded access agreement bearing the developer's signature. Finally, he displayed the county recorder's certification showing that the agreement had expired years earlier and had never been renewed. The room fell silent. One homeowner slowly raised his hand. "So the lake never belonged to the HOA?" "No," my attorney answered, "it never did." Another resident stood. "Then what exactly have we been paying lake fees for?" No one at the board table answered. Karen quietly slid several financial reports toward the homeowners. Annual lake maintenance fees, boat slip rentals, guest permits, special assessments for marina improvements. The totals stretched back for years. Someone in the audience did the math aloud. "That's hundreds of thousands of dollars." A wave of angry voices swept through the room. Linda grabbed the microphone. "These records are being taken out of context." Before she could say anything else, Sheriff Cole spoke. "Mrs. Mercer, context isn't the issue." He held up a printed email recovered from the HOA records. "I believe this is your message," he read it aloud. "If people believe we own it, they'll keep paying the fees." The room erupted. Several board members looked stunned. One elderly homeowner slowly shook his head. "You knew," Linda tried to explain. "It wasn't meant that way." But no one was listening anymore. Within minutes, 2 board members publicly resigned. The remaining directors voted to remove Linda as HOA president effective immediately. Outside the clubhouse, workers hired by the new interim board began taking down the faded sign that read, "Silver Pines Community Lake." A week later, every unauthorized boat slip had been removed from the marina. The false HOA warning signs disappeared. The county opened an investigation into the board's financial records. Several homeowners later thanked me, not because I had won the dispute, but because the truth had finally come out. A month after everything settled, I reopened the lake under one condition. Residents were welcome to fish, kayak, and enjoy the water free of charge, provided they respected the property and followed basic safety rules. No permits, no unnecessary fees, no abuse of authority. Just neighbors enjoying the same lake my grandfather had protected decades earlier. One Saturday morning, I hung the old yellow 550 HOA violation notice on the wall inside the cabin, beside the framed lake deed. Whenever friends asked why I kept it, I always gave the same answer. A piece of paper nearly convinced an entire neighborhood who owned this lake. I smiled as I looked across the quiet water, but in the end, one deed was worth 1,000 HOA rules. And every sunrise over that lake reminded me of something my father used to say. Titles make people feel important, but ownership is what the law remembers.